Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here to the meeting of the Minnehaha County Commission, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so there's a reminder, please, to silence your cell phones, which I should probably do. I did. Their meeting documents are available for review down on the end next to Commissioner Heiberger, and Craig is here today if you need a listening device. It takes us to item 1. I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next item, consider a motion to approve the meeting minutes for May 14th, 2019.
I'd make a motion to amend the minutes from May 14th of the regular commission meetings to reflect that the conference that I attended as the Safety and Justice Challenge Conference, it reflects a juvenile conference, but it was a Safety and Justice Challenge Conference. So I'd make that a motion.
Commissioner Heiberger's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And then I'd make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Those motions are approved. Then I'd take motion to approve the special commission meeting minutes from the Minnehaha County area tour last week.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item is bills to be paid in the amount of $499,761.86.
Move for approval. Excuse me. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments? Commissioner
Madam
Barr.
Chair, this batch of bills includes $293,000 for the library fund that we passed through, I believe.
Okay. Any other comments? I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item, there's reports. There's a report from the Siouxland Library Board, their meeting minutes. And next item is personnel actions. I'd consider a motion to approve routine personnel actions.
Motion to approve routine action.
Second.
Motion and second. Carrie, did you want to speak now or did you want to speak after this motion?
If I could go ahead and speak
Perfect.
now. I do think we'll need a second motion for this.
Okay.
But I want to point out that in your packet, you saw that there's also a special personnel action request. I'm asking for your approval to hire Carol James as a senior deputy state's attorney for the state's attorney's office at $3,171.20 biweekly, effective May 22nd. You're probably familiar with the name. Carol resigned from employment in late December with us and is interested in coming back. We're happy to have her back. This is an outside salary policy request technically, but it's the salary she was earning when she left. So we're requesting your approval of that today.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the routine matters. So if we could pass the routine matters and then we'll take a separate motion on Carol James.
That sounds great.
Okay, so motion and a second to approve the routine personnel actions. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I'd consider a motion to approve the action related to hiring Carol James.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Okay, the next item is we have a series of abatements. Olivia.
Yes. They are all for Arise Church. So first we have parcel 57426 for 2017 property taxes in the amount of $391.85. Then for 2018 property taxes in the amount of $2,501.44. Then we have parcel 57427, 2017 property taxes in the amount of $422.63, and 2018 property taxes in the amount of $2,697.66. Then we have parcel 57428, 2017 property taxes in the amount of $600.53. Then we have same parcel 57428, 2018 property taxes in the amount of $3,840.94. Then we have parcel 57429, 2017 property taxes in the amount of $653. and 2018 property taxes in the amount of $3,840.94.
Okay. I think we can handle these in one motion.
Move to approve the abatements.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, roll call vote. Thank you, Olivia.
Hiberger,
Yes.
Karski,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Now the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, are notices and requests, and there are none. Planning and zoning notices, there are none. Item 9, petition for a compromise of lien, there's none. So that takes us to opportunity for public comment. I know we have at least one person, a couple people here for public comment this morning. If you could just identify yourself, name and address, please.
Jamie Phelps with Human Services here. And I just want to take an opportunity for a moment to introduce our new vet service officer for Minnehaha County. This is Kathy Richardson. She's a Marine, and she comes to us with a few years of experience as a VSO working for the state, and we're happy to have her on board our team. She's done an excellent job thus far.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Richardson. I am the new Minnehaha County Veteran Service Officer, and I was in the Marine Corps for 13 years. I was over at the state for 2 years before I came over here, and I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And do you guys have any questions about vet services or anything? And
Just a comment. I've been over to Human Services already and gotten to meet Kathy, and she is already very busy, and they're singing her praises already. So welcome aboard, Kathy. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Thank you for coming over.
Jamie.
Is anyone else for public comment? Good morning.
Good morning. Jay Major, 25968 476th Avenue, Sioux Falls. President, CEO of MedStar Ambulance and Transit Service. The first thing I want to say is, Gene, and to the administrator, thank you. We met, and as far as the monies that we were talking about, we've come to a conclusion on the paperwork that they need to get that done, and you know, that'll be here shortly as you requested from my accountant. And I appreciate you meeting with us and having that discussion. And thanks for lining that up. There's been a few things kind of flying around, and I need to stand here and I need to take care of this right in front of this council. And I'm not going to point anybody's names out because I think that's not fair. But there's been some discussion on MedStar holding the cycle track hostage as far as payments go and what we're going to charge and what we're not going to charge out there. First off, the story in the Argus Leader wasn't even close to the truth, not close. And I talked to Joe Sneeving, and I think he is part of that cycle operation down there. He is a cyclist himself, and that story was pretty biased in my opinion. Second off, I read in there that the council, leading you, Mrs. Bender, said that you need to change the ordinance because it wasn't meant that MedStar would have a veto vote. Now, I don't recall getting a phone call from anybody on this council asking me what happened with the cycle club, because nobody here knows. Nobody here knows exactly how that transpired and how things are done now. And by the way, after negotiations, before that came out in the paper, we had come to an agreement that was $25 more than they paid last year. After it came out in the paper, but it was already done. And that was through negotiations. Nobody knows about the negotiations we had before that and how that was turning out. And so MedStar just has a black eye in the paper now because they read what Joe Sneeve wrote. They don't read what I said to him. And you folks didn't bother to call me and ask me, the guy that is taking the hit in the paper now, about what had transpired with that particular incident. Now, frankly, you didn't know this, but Paramedics Plus was out there 6 times this winter providing them service. 6 times in my territory. I asked to provide services at the fairgrounds and transport, and the answer was no, by the same company. And so I didn't provide service out there because I'm not going to stand by someplace where I can't transport, especially when there's a possibility of somebody getting really hurt bad. So I give up that business because I'm not going to stand by where I can't transport. Well, they decided to stand by where they couldn't transport, and I think that's a business decision. Financially, probably worked out for them, but as far as public health goes and somebody getting hurt, wouldn't work out so well if they needed to be transported and they had to wait an extra 15 minutes for me to get there. I'm not playing that game. So I suggest to this council, I have done everything plus that I've told you I'm going to do as an ambulance service in this county. And I deserve the respect of this council to call me if there's issues concerning my service, because I haven't gotten a phone call yet from anybody. And the one person I did confide in threw me under the bus on this council with some untruths to the paper. And I won't point that person out. The paper called me up, I told them exactly what it was, and they didn't print it. Because they said, oh, you already told that person? Yeah, 2 days ago I told that person exactly what was going on. I'm not sure why they gave you a phone call. I'm not quite sure that that's this council's, issue, if there's an issue with my service, to go to the paper about it. Especially if it's not true. There are some things that are true. One of them is, and it's nobody's business, but my wife and I are going through a divorce. And we're still together. And we're still working hard to make things work out. That's my personal business, and I've been asked to provide that information to the news media also, and I refuse to do it. I love her, she loves me, we're working things out. That's my personal business. That's nobody else's business. As far as my company goes, I'm not going bankrupt, I'm not bouncing checks, and all these other things that I've been told I'm doing with my company. We've had some disgruntled employees, which you've all had if you own a business. It's called disgruntled employees. And as a business owner, I can't say things about them because I'm held to a higher standard. So I have to sit and take it, as most business people do. What more do you want from me? What more do you want? What more does this council want from me? And I could stand up here and I could point people out and I could say things, and I'm not going to, because I'm not going that route anymore. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment today? Anybody else that'd like to speak about something that's not on the agenda?
Madam Chair, I would just like to say that I'm the guy that Jay did not choose to point out, and certainly I made a mistake in that, but my responsibility is not only to Jay, but to the community, and to whatever extent that I caused additional problem for Jay, I apologize sincerely.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to regular business. And DJ Boothie, we appreciate you being flexible with us last week. And so thank you for coming this week for your presentation.
Morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothie, Highway Superintendent. I was just joking with Carol. I think this is the third time that I've been scheduled for this. And I was trying to think of a way to get out of it again, but I guess
Too late now.
We've got 33 employees that are going to help me give this presentation, and they'll all be given, I think, 10 minutes is the limit. And so, you know, hopefully you have the afternoon blocked off as well. All right.
Every one of those 33, 10 minutes, are you?
Yeah. Don't you?
We all need some humor this morning, so we
Learned
appreciate
from the
the
sheriff's
sentiment.
office and the state attorney's office. There's power in numbers. So, no, just me this morning. This is the 2019 Highway Department update presentation, and feel free to chime in if you have any questions or anything. Try to keep it informal. We've got a list of completed projects that we've completed throughout the last 12 months. Up here, I'm going to go through each one of these kind of individually, but I tried to pick some highlights of some of the bigger issues and projects that we've dealt with over the last 12 months. Certainly a lot more than what we have time for in this presentation, but just a couple different things to try to talk about the wide variety of things that we accomplish in the Highway Department. First thing was our biannual bridge inspections. Every year we inspect about half of our bridges. We've got a 197 bridge count right now, and I would say every year we probably inspect between 100 and 110 of them, depending on what structures are up for inspection, which ones we've replaced and they require new structure inspections, and then which ones are on 12-month inspection. This picture here shows an inspection platform, and that's something that we try to get our hands on every single square inch of the steel girders on the large bridge structures that are over big channels like the Big Sioux River or Split Rock Creek. We don't want to do those inspections from the shoreline or underneath the structure. We want to get close and personal with those structures so we know what's going on at the critical points underneath the bridge. So our bridge inspections, they were pretty successful this year. We've got some data that shows our performance measures. In 2018, the federal government came up with some directives on how to track performance measures on structures. They did this for the state governments, but we've kind of fallen in line with that too, just trying to get an idea of what condition our structures are in and compare that to what other agencies have for the condition of their structures to know if we're doing as well as we should be or as well as our neighbors. And in the way that these are tracked, I'll try to explain it briefly, is the bridges are counted on the left-hand column there, and then the deck area is shown on the right-hand column. And there's a good, fair pour on each structure. And you look at the deck, the superstructure, the substructure, or if it's a culvert, you look at the culvert rating. In the past, we've looked at ratings from 1 through 9, and they were assigned just a number rating for each one of those categories. Moving forward with these performance measures, you're assigned a category, and those 1 through 9 numbers were broken down, and you're assigned a good, fair, poor category. The way that each structure is identified as good, fair, or poor, it's the worst rating for each of those categories. So if the deck is good, the structure or the superstructure is good, but the substructure is poor, that bridge is reported on as a poor structure. And so looking at some of those numbers there, on the left-hand column, just by bridge count, we've got about 45% of our structures in good condition. Other counties in South Dakota average 29% in good condition. For the fair structures, we've got about 41% of our structures in fair condition, and the rest of the counties have 46%. In poor condition, we've got about 15%, and overall the counties have about 24% in poor condition. So overall, we're a little bit better than other counties. We're still trying to increase the number of good condition structures on our system and really reduce or eliminate the structures that are in poor condition. The way that we do that is by doing maintenance and preservation projects on a lot of those fair condition structures and then replacing the poor structures. Any questions on those performance measures at all? All right. Looking at the trends, what we've done over the years, this goes back to 1993 is how far they have data that they're able to track through this reporting system. A couple important things to highlight. In 2013, we really decided to make a concentrated effort on our structures, on our system, and tried to more thoroughly inspect the structures, I guess, for lack of better words, be a little more honest with our inspections, be a little more critical with the inspector that's performing those, and say we really want to know what exactly is going on with these structures, because we're going to make a concentrated effort at making those repairs. So you can see in 2013, we had an increase in the number of poor inspections, and that again was just really focusing with the inspector that we want to take a good hard look at these structures. And then in 2014, we were notified by the federal government that they're going to start inspecting and calculating load limits for specialized haul vehicles, which is a single unit truck that has multiple axles, like a dump truck that you might see that has a whole bunch of axles on it. That took us by surprise. We weren't prepared for that, and what it resulted in was a lot more load limited structures and a lot more poor condition structures. And so on the top chart there, you can see the red are the poor condition structures. You can see a spike in 2013 and 14, and that's what was happening there. In 2015, the state government passed SB 1, which is transportation funding legislation, and included the Bridge Improvement Grant Program. And you can see, since that era, I guess, in the more recent years, we've seen an increase in the green trend, which is the good condition structures, a decrease in the red, poor condition structures, and the fair condition structures kind of stayed somewhat stable. You can also kind of see that on the bottom, which has all the South Dakota counties, similar trends, just not as drastic. For construction projects, last year our big, yeah, Gene.
Can I just ask one question about bridges? So, I mean, this is all really interesting, and I'm curious, when you've got all these different lines to track, how you choose which bridge to tackle next. I mean, I know you've talked about this before, but I think it'd be interesting to just kind of review, because you're not just focusing on the red line, or the lines wouldn't be going the way they are.
Right.
So,
Yeah, these are just real simple performance measure sheets that we can look at, or charts that we can look at to show general trends. When we're looking at actually budgeting for our 5-year plan, we've got a much larger spreadsheet that has about 50 different metrics on it. And we're looking at those condition ratings that I described before, first and foremost. There's a number that is called the federal sufficiency rating that gives each structure kind of a number grade out of 0 to 100 that we start by sorting every single structure in our system by that number. Then we start looking at different metrics in that large spreadsheet, and it's a pretty long process, and it's a complicated process, but the spreadsheet is much more involved than just these simple performance measures.
okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, since we're interrupting him here for a moment, DJ, have we gotten rid of bridges? Because it seems to me we used to have 199, now it seems we have 197.
We kind of float. We go up and down over the years. I think that since I've been here, the highest we've been is 203, and the lowest we've been is 196. And so that changes most of the time because we have hydraulic analysis every time we do a bridge replacement. We might change a bridge to a box culvert. We might change a box culvert to a bridge. And so that number is kind of a moving target.
But we're not losing access to parts of the county because the bridge is out.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next type of project that we've completed is just a reconstruction project. This one in particular was north of Crooks, and it was a 6-mile long reconstruction project that we did the first phase, which is just the grading, replacing culverts, preparing the base for a future paving project, which is currently scheduled for this year. This project was about $2.8 million. Contractor R&G Construction was on this job, and it was County Highway 137 from County Highway 122 to County Highway 110. We acquired the full 100-foot swath of right-of-way. We did drainage improvements, culvert replacements, road and shoulder widening, and the future paving project that we're going to be doing this year will have rumble strips and pretty significant site or site distance improvements. The next type of project that we've done a lot of work on are studies, just trying to plan for the future, plan for a 5-year plan, and even farther beyond that. We've done a lot of public outreach, public meetings throughout the last 12 months for these two particular studies. We've got the Maple Park Corridor Study, which I know everyone is familiar with, and then also we completed the Northeast Transportation Study. Again, just lots of contacts with landowners individually and as small groups and as large open format public meetings, just trying to get planned what we want to have for our transportation system in the future. Some big recommendations that have come out of these studies are reconstructing the northern 6 miles of County Highway 103, which is going to be a big project for us in our 5-year plan. And then the decision to move forward with a paving project on the Maple Park Corridor. And that's an interesting project because there's a lot of different jurisdictions involved. We've got Split Rock Township, who currently has the jurisdiction of that roadway, the city of Brandon and the city of Sioux Falls on both ends of that. And so at the end of this project, there's going to be the city of Brandon, Minnehaha County Highway, and then city of Sioux Falls. And so that's been an interesting process that The county commission will be hearing a presentation from our consultant HDR here in the next few weeks or the next month or so, reporting the final report for that study. Another thing that we've been doing a lot of is flying drones around and using social media for public outreach and gathering feedback from the public as well. 12 months ago or 14 months ago, I suppose, when we started in the social media world, we had just a couple hundred people following our page. Posts that we would post, we didn't really know the right approach for that, and they were only getting like 100 engagements on our first few posts. And so we did some training, we learned a little bit, we started looking at the metrics on how people are reacting for different types of posts, like a text post, a picture post, or a video post. And we've gotten, I think, over 3,000 people following our page now. And now we're looking at 30,000 people engaging on a post. And the one that we had the most was almost 300,000. And so we've had a lot of luck with our social media. A big part of that has been the usage of the drone. We've got a few different pictures there showing some examples. The white one that is hard to look at is a picture of a snow blower this winter blowing out 103. We had a pretty significant winter with the snow accumulation, and so being able to show the public how we deal with that, I think, really reduce the amount of complaints and significantly increase the amount of thank yous and positive responses that we had coming into the highway department. People are really appreciative knowing what we're doing out there and being able to see that kind of in a neat perspective with the drone. The bottom right is a picture of the drone that we use. We've got two different drones. That's the nicer drone that we take some real high quality video with. And then the top right picture right there, you can kind of hardly see it. There is a little small drone sitting on the flange of that bridge. That was a 100% not intended expert landing on the bridge done by yours truly. And I don't know how it happened to stay right there, but it did stay right there, and we were able to retrieve that drone. So we don't plan those, and hopefully it never happens again, but
You captured it for posterity, so that's what counts.
sure, yeah. Future opportunities. Not going to spend a ton of time on these, but the wheel tax. The wheel tax right now is set at $4 per wheel for up to 4 wheels on a motor vehicle. And by state law in 2015, that was changed as part of that transportation funding bill. Counties are able to modify their wheel tax. It is a local control tax, and that can go up to $5 per wheel, up to 12 wheels. And so that's a conversation that we're hoping to have through the budget process and later on this year with the county commission, just to see if there's an appetite for looking further into how we administer our wheel tax. ERP software updates. The ERP program that the auditor's office changed to Munis over the last year or two has been a significant upgrade to what we had before. And going through those updates, we've identified some additional updates that we probably should be looking at for the highway department. More specifically, the object codes that we use are the budget line items that we allocate all of our money to and from. And so we want to look at those and possibly make some changes just to make it more realistic. A lot of those object codes were created decades ago, and they don't really resemble the type of work that we're doing anymore, and they could use some better descriptions. Project programming. We recently hired another engineering specialist and also a maintenance project coordinator, and so we want to do some additional project coordinating for maintenance-driven projects. Right now, most of the contracts that we hire contractors for are big capital projects like a bridge replacement or a road reconstruction. And so we want to use these two employees for a lot of maintenance-driven projects that we can go and widen a shoulder, or we can do some pavement rehabilitation. We can do a lot of maintenance-driven projects that our own in-house maintenance guys don't have the time or the resources to do. We can accomplish a lot for really not a lot of money with those maintenance projects, and really decrease the cost of ownership for a lot of our assets. And so we're gonna take a new look at project programming over the next 12 months with these new staff persons. Safety projects. You all know that we've made safety a pretty large initiative in our department over the last probably 24 months. And so we are going to increase the amount of rumble strips that we're using, especially centerline rumbles. We've selected some roadways that we're going to be installing centerline rumbles on coming this year, and also a large project next year. And then some more edgeline rumbles. We should have, I would say, the majority of our system edgeline rumbled by the end of next year. Some drone pilot certifications. We initially had 2 people certified for piloting our drone, and actually we accomplished this last week. We had a training class where we had an additional 5 people take the test. All of them passed, so we have 7 drone pilots now, which is definitely too many for what we really need, but we wanted to have the versatility of being able to use that drone in the different aspects of our department. And then last but not least, for future opportunities, building project has been kind of looming over the last few years, and it sounds like that's getting some traction. And so we want to work with the commission and a committee that's been put together for developing a good plan for moving forward with accomplishing a building project over the next few years.
All right.
So with that, I'll have time for questions if anybody has any questions.
Commissioner Barry.
DJ, thanks for this. And, you know, one of the things about this year's weather is everybody thinks that they are been specially chosen to have a bad road. And I've probably had 5 phone calls from people who think their road is the worst in the county, and they're probably right. If we were to, we do share the money we get from wheel tax with the townships, don't we?
That's correct.
So if we were to, say, increase the wheel tax on vehicles with wheels more than 4, some of that money would go to the townships. I know 261st Street off of south of Hartford is in horrible condition, and it wasn't even the storm, it was the bad engineering and stuff that went into that township road. And just yesterday, last night, with our planning and zoning, that fed into a project where they wanted to put a gravel pit on that road, and they can't use that road. Anyway, some of that money would help the townships, and I think anyone that lives on a township road knows that they need help. And during the storm, I know one large dairy that was having to buy their own gravel to put down on the road at $12 a ton. Is that a good price, by the way?
If it's delivered, that's probably a pretty good price.
Okay, well, anyway, I think that is something we should consider at some point, and we should talk to the townships.
Commissioner Karski.
2 things. One, on the wheel tax, I look forward to that discussion later in the year, and I've been engaging people and groups I'm involved in to kind of talk a little bit about that. So I encourage my fellow commissioners and just people reaching out to do the same, find out what it is, how it works, who pays it, where the money goes, etc. The other thing is, about a year, maybe it was 2 years ago, I talked about centerline rumble strips, and I'm glad to hear that we're moving towards that, especially when you take a look at the accidents that occur and how it's typically a distracted driving or inattentive driving, and the fact that those rumble strips will, I would think, help people put their eyes to where they're supposed to be if they are distracted. So I'm glad to hear that we are moving towards that with the centerline rumble strips. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, once again, we appreciate you being flexible. It's a great presentation. Thank you very much. So I think you have the next item as well. Item 11, the highway bid results.
All right, Commissioners, on May 8th, 2019, we received 4 bids for project MC 16-02, which is a structure replacement on 50-072-100 and 50-070-098. We had previously received and rejected all bids on this contract because the price was too high. And so our engineering team, we rewrote the time specification for completion of this project and opened it up so they could complete it either yet this summer, a portion of it over the winter, or next year. And we received 4 bids when we rebid it. The low bidder was Pram Construction from Minnesota at $1,555,375.55. That was a little bit under what IDG had estimated with their engineer's estimate, and it was also a couple $100,000 less than the previous bid that we received. And so we did see a cost savings. The bad part of that is we did open up the time provision, and so it's possible that one or both of these structures might not be constructed until calendar year 2020. However, with that, I would recommend approving this contract and having the chairperson sign it, and I'll stand by if you have any questions.
Questions for DJ?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further comments? I just would like to thank your staff, DJ, for being, and for you, for your leadership and being open to kind of think outside of the box when the first bid didn't work as expected or as hoped. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, roll call vote. Thank you, Olivia.
Karski,
Aye.
Barth,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Hiberger,
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that takes us to our next presentation. We have a presentation from Jason Gearman in Emergency Management. Good morning. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. Jason Gearman with Emergency Management. What do I push here? Okay. All right. Basically, the role of emergency management is preparedness, response, recovery, and hazard mitigation. And this involves all sorts of meetings, a lot of training through Office of Emergency Management through the state. I just attended one yesterday in Mitchell. Obviously, we have a volunteer program that not a lot of emergency management offices have, especially as large as we are with the reserves, rescue squad, and the dive team. Police reserves. We just graduated 10 more police reserves, and I think some of you got a letter for the graduation that's coming up. What they do is provide extra services to the police. When we have large events like the fair, street dances, they provide that resource also. And what I really was amazed at when Doug told me that they donate over 9,000 hours a year, it's pretty impressive. And to start as a recruit, you need 150 hours of training, and then they have required to put in 36 hours yearly. And what I'm finding out is, they'll lose a few through the training process where they may have a class of 16 and some will drop out. But now they have 10 that have graduated, and usually if we can keep those for about a year or so, they continue with the program and do an excellent job for us. It's structured just like any law enforcement agency, so they do have a command staff. They promote people. They do interviews. It's pretty well organized, and it's an excellent resource for the county. And every so often, we pick up people as a county employee through this program, so it's beneficial that way too. Some of them want to become police officers, some of them don't. Many of the really good ones are, they work in the medical field, they're accountants, they work in the computer industry. So, and as I was Googling for pictures through the reserve program, you never know what you're going to come up with when you come up with, especially when I Googled the rescue squad, and this is what popped up. Commissioner Barth. He's the ambulance, rural fire ambulance liaison. We'll skip through that one. All right, next one. The rescue squad. About 15 members. We're always looking for extra volunteers for this, and we've had some contacts lately, and they do interviews. We are looking to upgrade the policies and the training program to keep the interest going. They do search and rescue, assist local fire departments. They assist with water rescues. If you see in the picture up to the right, I think that's a recovery of a member that drowned, or a individual that drowned out on, I can't remember what lake it was, but it was some time ago. Many of them are EMTs or have some kind of medical experience. They go out and assist traffic if they're needed out in accident scenes, and they're also weather spotters. The truck that you see there is one of the largest trucks we have, and it serves as a command center for the fire department. but it's also what's called a Cascade System. And the fire, they really like having this and to respond with this truck because it fills their air tanks when they're out on fires. It's in a mobile unit. It was purchased with a grant, I think in 2011. It does require maintenance for the Cascade System every year. You know, if we have to test the air to make sure it's a good quality and make sure it's working right. And all those guys are trained on that. And I've attempted to do it a couple times, and I wouldn't want to do it myself without somebody showing me what's going on. But all right, dive team. Before I started in this, I was obviously the captain of investigations. And what I had heard from the Sioux Falls Police about the dive team is they were really impressed with them because they went out, were able to locate a gun involved in a crime in the river. So that's what they specialize in, is evidence recovery, searches. They're not a swift water team like the Sioux Falls Fire Rescue is, where they train for the falls. These people do searches. The bottom picture is them out in Wall Lake just recently, and I always thought they just threw the buoys in with cement blocks on them. Well, no, they actually have to search for the hooks down on there, and that's a good training experience for them. And they do ice dives. They work really closely with Lake County, and a lot of the dive members have also been dive team members in like Aberdeen, so they have a really good connection throughout the state. And they've really started to organize how they do things. For example, and I'm learning this as I go too, they, if there's a certain, we were requested to go out to help with the garbage truck out by Mitchell area. You know, the sheriff and I had a conversation about, well, are they going to go in the water or not? Well, they have certain restrictions. If the water's flowing too fast, they won't go in it, the depth. So they cover all that in their training. And they have meetings and a structure, a rank structure, just like the police reserves. All right, some of the other services we do, which I've been busy with: damage assessments, preparedness, resource allocations. We deal with the rural ambulance, the rural fire departments, and obviously South Dakota Office of Emergency Management and grants. I recently met with FEMA. I've been with FEMA probably the last couple weeks off and on, along with State Office of Emergency Management. Individual assessments were done a couple weeks ago, and to be honest, I was very disappointed in how that turned out for the individual homeowners. The program, I was warned that this would probably happen, but just disappointed in how it turned out. However, on the flip side, the road assessments, the groups that came out, we did a really good job and were really helpful and very knowledgeable. And I can't say that there'll be a disaster declared, but I think that level will be there, the dollar level will be there to where I would think we would find out very shortly that the disaster declaration will be there. As I've toured the county and looked at the roads, a lot of these county roads are probably not going to be fixable for a couple years, and just how bad they are, especially in the Renner area, in the Baltic Township area. And I haven't had anything back from Split Rock, but I think they have a high dollar amount of damage yet. So we're going to have some issues with these roads coming up, and we really need to look at, how do we help these townships? And I'm going to try and help them the best they can to get this assistance through FEMA and help them walk through that. And I think you got to give DJ a hand too, because there was hardly any county roads that had any damage. Due to the engineering and probably her hydrology studies and, the box culverts and switching back and forth, where a lot of these townships, they were just not engineered maybe correctly, and culverts were washed out, and the water went where it was supposed to go, went where it wants to go, and caused a lot of damage. So, other than that, any questions?
Questions this morning? Commissioner Barth.
Surprise. I talked to a township fellow last night who said that the FEMA people told him that they were under expressing the cost of their damage on their roads, that they should have asked for a higher number than what they were asking, because it was worse than what this FEMA guy expected when he actually
I found
saw it.
a lot of conservative estimates with the damage to the townships, but there was also some outside the box estimates that we were a little concerned about. But this is a preliminary damage assessment, so what we'll be doing now is having them get all these contracts together, and they're gonna do projects. So this project, they're gonna have to have 3 bids. You're gonna have to go get bids for gravel, for base, and, you know, obviously it's gonna be tough for them to get 3 bids. They may have a contract in place already. So we'll work through that, but it's just, there's all these questions and rumors flying back and forth. I've been in contact with most of the townships, and I've been encouraging them to just call me personally, which they have been, but they don't need to worry if it was underbid at this point, because whatever it's gonna cost them in the end, as long as they can prove that they did it correctly, the way FEMA wants it done, I believe it's 75% FEMA reimbursement and 10% through the state.
Other questions, Commissioner Heiberger?
Just a comment. I just want to thank you for your work, Jason. You came in here as a professional, as a new hire to this job, but got fed a garden hose, or maybe it was a fire hose, and it continues. And you've done a really good job of, you didn't have that honeymoon period where you could try to figure out how this department works and what you needed to do, and you've done a very good job of stepping up, and I'm sure you've put in way more hours than you anticipated when you took this job. And I just thank you for that, and for your family for putting up with your long hours and what you've been doing. Hopefully it will settle down for you soon.
Well, hopefully it kind of is now. I took the EM 101 class in Mitchell yesterday. I wish I'd have had that in February. It would have been very helpful, but.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bennigan?
Just a question about maybe your disappointment with the landowner thing, and I don't know if we're far enough along in that process to be able to analyze that, but do you have any insights on why that's such a difficult process?
There's really no set dollar amount that says 26 homes have to be damaged or basements collapsed, and a lot of it comes off of the individual assessments that the FEMA that come out and assess. Okay, is this a destroyed house? Is this a partially damaged house? Is it minimal damage? So based on what they feel it is with their expertise. I was warned ahead of time by Regan Smith that he's been through this many times and said that it's kind of a different process, and it can be very tough to get individual assistance for these people that have their homes destroyed. And some of the stories I heard were pretty incredible. And I'll just give you one so we don't waste too much more time, but this gal's basement had collapsed. She had insurance. The insurance said, no, we don't cover it because it's earth that moved. And we were like, what? It was the first ice storm where the water just decided to go different places, and it backed up against the basement and caved it in, but they claimed that it was earth that moved, not flood waters per se. So that's the frustration that these people are having.
Frozen water versus regular water?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like there's excuses all over for not getting paid. But
Commissioner Heiberger?
And just one more comment, and Jason, you're probably more aware of this than I am, but I sit on NACO, National Association of Counties, and our representative for the state of South Dakota on emergency management is from Brookings County, and his name escapes me right now other than Robert. But there's a lot of conversation going on in the Safety and Justice group that I sit on emergency management and FEMA reimbursements of the homeowner part of it, because it's not just us. It's every time there's a disaster that the homeowner is getting left out. And so there has been continued conversation and work to bring stuff up to the hill legislatively, because how do we fix this? Because they're getting left behind. So we do have a representative on the state on that committee too.
yeah, it's something that really needs to be looked at. You know, with where the water went, there's a place in Del Rapids. There's a lot of places that they're not in a floodplain. They don't they can't get flood insurance. Why would you even have flood insurance? And then their basement collapsed because of floodwaters that normally there wouldn't be. So that's something we're gonna have to deal with in the future, so.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much. I want to echo what Commissioner Heiberger said. I know it's been, you were definitely thrown in the deep end. Sometimes people wonder why we have emergency management, and then you have
Emergencies.
Yeah, you have what we've had the last few months since you came on board, and your leadership has really been greatly appreciated, so thank you.
Well, when I was in the law enforcement side, it was always, it's really not what you do, it's what you might have to do.
Yeah. So hopefully you won't have to do this for a little while longer. All right, so that takes us to our next presentation. Warden Gromer, good morning.
Well, I will, down? Right, okay, thank you. Just touch on some of the things that we're doing at the jail and some of the things we've got going on at the jail. Really, the first thing I want to touch on is our mission statement for the jail. Hopefully this is about the only part of the presentation I'm going to just read, but I don't know how else to explain this one. The jail has a lot of stuff going on, and we have a lot of people coming through, and this mission statement really helps us keep an eye on what exactly our goals are. First and foremost is to maintain that jail in accordance with the constitutional laws, federal and state laws. There's a lot of constitutional law, I guess, that comes out of maintaining that jail, and their rights as citizens doesn't end once they're confined in the jail, and that's one of the things we really touch on quite a lot during the pre-service training for the staff. As we have conversations frequently about the dollars of the jail, it's expensive to operate the jail. We try to operate that facility in as cost-efficient a manner as we can. Obviously, we touch on non-discrimination for staff, visitors, inmates, and really anybody that we have contact with through the jail. Provide inmates with necessary and legally required medical, mental health care, and dental services. This is really a big part of the jail's operations, is the medical care and the mental health and dental care we have to provide. I'll touch on it a little bit later in the presentation with Armor, but most of the occupants of the jail don't spend a lot of time taking care of themselves physically, mentally, or through their dental care when they're not in custody. So when they do come to jail, it tends to become very much of a priority for them, and it is a fairly large part of the jail operations. The staff of the jail does a very good job maintaining safety and a humane environment in the jail. We spend a lot of time with our inmate policy book from an administration standpoint to make sure the inmates know the rules and that those rules do fall within the Constitution and both federal and state laws concerning jails. We also provide a range of programs for the inmates. Programs in the jail setting get very hard to continue simply because of our short jail stays that a lot of our inmates see, and I realize short's a relative term, but a lot of the inmates are coming and going from the jail. It's different than a penitentiary setting where people are sent to prison for a defined period of time. There's very rarely are jail stays a defined period of time. Somebody that comes to jail for a certain charge decides they want to participate in a treatment program. If their bond money comes up, they're not going to stay in jail longer to finish the treatment program. They're going to post their bond and leave, which is a good thing. Obviously, it helps them get back into the community, helps the control the jail numbers, but it does make the programs hard to maintain any continuity. But we do have a wide range of programs through treatment programs, a lot of religious volunteers. There are multiple volunteers in and out throughout the jail providing programs for the inmates on any given day. And then we try to provide our staff with ongoing training as well as their initial pre-service training when they start. Currently, the jail's got about 400 inmates on any given day. We've been able to maintain that population through this spring. We had a very good winter this year with our jail numbers stayed very manageable. With our 400 inmates right now, the jail's currently configured to house with 456 beds. That we increased the number of beds in some of our dormitories after we had the fire at the correction center last summer. And then through the expansion process, we've added a few beds in other areas of the jail. So we're currently at that 456 number. Just as kind of a reminder, with our peaking and classification factors we try to maintain in the jail, we're technically full at about 388, and we're running at this point in time right at about 400 inmates. The 24/7 and electronic monitoring programs continue to be very valuable programs for us. We're currently supervising about 470 people on those programs on any given day. Everyone in the electronic monitoring program also participates in 24/7, so that 24/7 is a pretty big part of the jail operations. Our bookings, as you can see, we dropped in our bookings a little bit between 2017 and 2018. I prepared the PowerPoint a couple of weeks ago, so that 6,655 for year-to-date is a little lower than what it is now. We're probably fairly close to 7,000 by this point in time this year. That's pretty consistent. I don't have a good explanation for why we dropped about 1,000 bookings between 2017 and 2018. It's kind of part of the jail. We don't really have a lot of control over how many people we get or how many get released. It's nice to see that number lower rather than higher, but I don't have a good explanation for where that 1,000 dip would come from. It's one of those numbers that I'll continue to be watching to see if it becomes a trend or if it's just kind of an isolated year. Our inmate populations continued to grow, as I mentioned, with the loss of the correction center last summer. That's put some additional pressure on the jail, the downtown jail, and we'll continue to see that pressure until we're able to occupy part of the expansion. Our inmate populations right now, we kind of manage on almost a daily basis, but it's really about a weekly situation where we're getting a hold of counties that are housing inmates in our jail to tell them, look, we need some room for the weekend, so you're going to have to find other arrangements. This hits Lincoln County particularly hard because they're forced to rent beds all over the area, so they have a difficult time getting beds. Once the first phase of the expansion is done, we're going to be able to house that 45 inmates with Lincoln County that we're contracted with. There have been a few times early on last fall, we were required to rent beds in other jurisdictions. I think you're all well aware of that. We had a fair number that we were housing in a couple of different jails, and then once this spring, we've had to move a few inmates to, again, Falk County to try to control our populations a little bit. And where that comes from, it's just the makeup of what types of inmates we have at any given time. This spring, we just had too many female inmates to be able to accommodate in our current setup, and I didn't have the flexibility to change the housing configuration around a little bit to gain female beds without then forcing me to house male inmates somewhere else. So it's just that constant juggling a little bit of how we're going to be able to do that to accommodate those needs. Again, Lincoln County, once we open the first phase of the expansion, we'll be able to start that contract with Lincoln County for those 45 beds. Currently, I have 146 staff authorized at the jail, as was approved in last year's budget. I was approved to hire 6 more in the fourth quarter of this year. We'll start that hiring process and hopefully get those folks on board as close to that start of that quarter as we can, so we can have them trained and get some experience under their belt before we occupy the completed expansion in the summer of 2020. The jail staff, I mentioned it earlier, the line staff really do a very good job of maintaining safety and security in the jail environment. What we've seen a lot with the jail population is the inmates are they're charged with higher level offenses, and that just continues to increase a little bit. When I started in the jail, we had a lot of people in jail for misdemeanors. If you look through the jail roster now, there are very few folks that are in jail for misdemeanor offenses. If they are in jail for a misdemeanor offense, they are not there for very long. They're going to court and they're moving out of jail and through their court case. The folks we're seeing, even on a lot of lower level felony charges, the people that we're having stay in jail on some of these felonies are people that just cannot function outside of that custodial environment. And the courts, we work very closely with the courts, and I think our judges in this circuit do a really, really good job of assessing which inmates or which defendants in front of them can go out on bond, which are not a danger to the community or which are not a risk of flight, and only keeping those people in custody that truly need to be there. And it's not uncommon for us to have inmates in jail with 4 or 5 and 6 different pending felony cases, and they get out on bond and they just continue to get rearrested for new charges or fail to appear for their current charges, and at some point in time the judges just have to come to a decision that clearly this person can't function in society and we're going to need to keep them in custody. And these are a lot of the people that are occupying our jail beds. So when we see our numbers are continuing to increase, it's not an increase of minor charges. It's an increase of people that just can't seem to get through a week or a month without picking up another charge or failing to comply with some condition of their bond that the courts put on them. What that does with the jail population, though, is it fills it up with a lot of people that are really, really fairly needy, and they have some serious emotional, behavioral problems, addiction issues, and they're really tough folks to deal with. When I was a brand-new corrections officer, we had a few of those guys that were just huge behavior problems. But that percentage is increasing, and the percentage of guys that, just got too drunk and made some bad decisions and are really fairly decent guys, that percentage is decreasing. So those numbers are really flip-flopping, and you're seeing these severe behavior problems really put a huge burden on the staff. And there's a lot of times I'm just really impressed with the way the staff is able to manage some of these guys' behavior issues and their behavior problems. But that's really the biggest change I think I've seen from the jail over my career, is just this switch in the neediness of a lot of these guys and some of the severe behavior problems we have. We also are running the electronic monitoring program now. We've made a decision to move away from the traditional work release program, which I think has been a really good decision. Obviously, the loss of the correction center helps you make that decision, but the electronic monitoring program is for sentenced inmates that are serving a sentence. The judge authorizes them to participate in this program, and it allows us to monitor folks. Right now we have about 40 inmates on the program. It allows us to monitor them out of custody, so they're going home, they're not taking up a jail bed, we're not feeding them, we're not providing the medical care, and they can stay at home and contribute to their families, I guess, for lack of a better term. They're helping to pay the rent, they're helping their wives or significant others with their kids, they're maintaining jobs, they're staying in the community. It's just a better way to operate this program than the traditional work release program. As a benefit, it's more economical for the participant, it doesn't cost quite as much, and it's better for the jail staff because we can maintain them through the program. With the ankle bracelets, we're able to monitor their activities outside of custody a lot better than we were when they were on traditional work release. We can pull them up and we know where they're at any given point in time in the day. It's really a pretty good program and very efficient for us to operate. 24/7. 24/7 continues to be a very successful program. That program has, I think the studies over the years have shown how successful that program is. It does a really, really good job of helping a lot of these people maintain sobriety. Throughout the program, it's grown and expanded. When the program started, it was twice-a-day PBTs, and as you can see, we still have 234 people participating in that aspect of the program. The scram bracelets have been a good advancement in that. The scram bracelets are just a ankle bracelet very similar to the GPS bracelet that monitors for alcohol use. That's a very good program. The remote breath program is it's a newer program that's just been implemented, where the participant essentially takes a PBT with them that photographs them when they perform the test a couple of times a day and sends the information back to our office. We've seen a huge growth in the amount of urinalysis testing. That UA testing also places a fairly big burden on the 24/7 program, just because it's more labor intensive than the PBTs. Still using interlock, drug patch. It's still being used. The UAs are far surpassing what we're doing with the drug patch now. One of the things with the 24/7 program, while it has been a very successful program, what happens with any successful program is it continues to grow, and this program started off with pre-sentence and sentenced people, and it's grown. People are on the program for Department of Social Services to monitor their sobriety during visitation times. Work permits, we're doing some probation and parole testing, but as a program's successful, everybody wants to kind of get on board, so this program's really grown, and with that, it's grown in complexity. It's gotten to be a fairly complex program to continue to maintain. What we're seeing is, and I mentioned it earlier, with people with 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 different pending cases, they'll be on the program on 24/7 for some combination of those cases. So it requires the 24/7 staff to keep track of what number violation it is and what cases they're participating on. So it just becomes a lot of a tracking issue while we're working through the program. One of the hardest things to maintain with 24/7 is consistency with the program. Each case is unique, so probation officers and judges, they each want to tailor a little bit of the conditions for these people on their participation to their individual case, which I completely understand. But when you're talking about 470 people, to maintain consistency is really, it's really necessary for us to be able to operate the program. And we spend a lot of time trying to maintain consistency with that program just so we can continue to have the success that we are having in the program. Medical care in the jail, I touched on that a little bit ago on how much of a significant portion of the operations that medical care is. This year we were able to attain accreditation through NCCHC, which that's a good milestone for the jail medical staff. It provides us a national framework, a defensible framework for us to operate our medical clinic under. Jennifer Hankey is the health service administrator at the jail for Armour, and she has done a really, really good job over the last 2 or 3 years to get us to a position where we were able to achieve that accreditation. And when we sat through the closeout audit, we had no real deficiencies or corrections that we needed to make in any significant way. So it was very well done, and the audit went very smoothly, and that's attributed a lot to Jen's work. We've had a contract now with Armour to provide the medical care, and Jennifer is a Armour employee. Armour has done a very good job managing that health care, and really over the last 3 or 4 years, we've really seen our medical clinic and our medical operation in the jail become pretty solid. I'm very happy with how it's operating at this point, and they're really doing well. As evidence to that, you can see you'll see in the 2020 budget request that contract services item for the Armour contracts actually a reduction from last year's dollar amount, and that's we're able to accomplish that with no reduction in care. It's just improvements in the operation, and things are actually going very well in that clinic at this point. The nurses at the jail, again, they're very similar to the corrections staff. They do a very good job dealing with a very, very difficult population. A lot of these inmates that we're seeing with a lot of the substance abuse issues, a lot of these behavioral problems, and they're constantly getting arrested for multiple cases. They don't spend a lot of time taking care of themselves when they're outside of jail. So they're coming to jail with a lot of truly significant medical problems that the jail medical staff have to address, as well as all the non-significant medical problems that they're trying to use as an excuse to get out of jail. And it is a constant game from the inmate standpoint, trying to find a way to get out of jail, or trying to find a way to get a specific medication that they want prescribed. And the medical staff has to kind of wade through that and make determinations as to which ones are legitimate, which ones are not legitimate, which are severe, which are not severe, and what medications are appropriate for that, much to some disagreement with a lot of their patients. So they're really actually at this point in time doing a very good job, and I'm very happy with where we're at from a medical standpoint. The mental health care at the jail is provided by a company called WestCare. WestCare is a subcontractor to Armour. The mental health component at the jail consists of the 3 full-time counselors and a couple of part-time nurse practitioners that provide the mental health care and the mental health services in the jail. And it's very similar to the medical staff. The inmate population, again, continues to be more needy, and some legitimate, some not legitimate, but the mental health staff is charged with wading through and working with these guys on a lot of their mental health problems. What we see a lot in the jail, obviously, and we've talked about it in multiple different meetings, is that the numbers of mentally ill inmates continues to increase. We're also seeing large increases in the number of inmates with mental health problems that don't rise to the level of an SMI diagnosis or a clear mental health diagnosis. A lot of these folks have behavioral problems, and I'm going to try not to use the mental health terms because I'm not a provider, but they don't, a lot of them come in claiming they have lots of serious mental health issues, but no clear mental health diagnosis. If someone has been diagnosed with a serious mental illness and has the diagnosis, it's fairly an easy transition for the jail mental health staff to take over the care of that person. When folks come in claiming to have serious mental illness, but nothing's ever been diagnosed, and now the mental health staff has to start to work through that process. And honestly, a lot of times these are behavioral issues, and it's a drug-seeking behavior, but the mental health staff has to wade through it all to try to determine if there's not a diagnosis there, if there is a diagnosis there, where have they been treated. And with the levels of manipulation we see from a lot of our inmates, it becomes very complicated for the mental health staff to sort through that. The three counselors have a very heavy caseload. They see, upwards around 20, 30, up to 40 patients a day, depending on the need. And the nurse practitioners do a very good job of trying to maintain their medications and ensure we're prescribing appropriately. Now we're off to the expansion, which is very fun to talk about as we see things start to progress. As you can see from the picture, the sheriff and Michelle and I climbed up a lot of stairs the other day.
Lived to tell the tale.
We
so
did.
Congratulations.
We did.
So,
That 5th floor looks very good. They're close to being done. The security electronics provider should be in there for pretty much the month of June, and then we'll have a few detail things to work out in July, and hopefully we'll be into that space in the first part of August. Entering that space or occupying that space is going to allow us to increase our bed capacity by about 100 beds. And then we should be able to exercise that contract with Lincoln County, which should help on a revenue standpoint for us. We'll also help Lincoln County with some of their bed needs, and that 100 beds will really take some of the pressure we have off of our current situation in the jail. Next phase of the construction should be completed in the summer of 2020. That will increase our total bed capacity to 616, or our inmate capacity up to about 520-ish. That space, the bigger part of that space, rather than the beds we're going to gain, is we have the new intake area and the administrative space. The jail staff and I are really looking forward to this intake space. The current intake was designed with the construction of the current jail, so we're looking at close to 20 years at this point in time, 15 to 20, and we've just kind of outgrown that space. So getting into this new space is going to be really nice. I think this intake area is going to be far more efficient. The release processes will be more efficient. The booking process will be more efficient. We're really looking forward to that. The new space also includes a new space for the EM program, 24/7, the walking warrant program that we operate out of the jail. And it'll be nice to have that in new spaces that are kind of built into the jail. It's just going to be a lot better setup as we get into that. Last part of the expansion is the new 2nd and 3rd floors, which are housing units that are very, very similar in design as to what we have currently in the jail. The addition of those spaces increases the total capacity to 727 beds for the entire facility. As we've talked, we don't plan on occupying that space immediately upon completion. What I intend to do with a lot of that space is we'll move inmates from the current jail into the new jail and vacate portions of the current jail, so we're able to do some remodeling and cleaning and things like that, which is just very hard to do while the space is occupied. That space will allow us to kind of grow into it. Based on the projections we looked at through the design and build phases of the project, we're looking at the overall expansion meeting our needs for probably 10 to 12 years, which is really how the current jail was designed to work, and we were able to squeeze 15 or better out of that. So that's kind of what we're looking for with the new one. Other than that, does anybody have any questions?
all those good-looking, smiling faces looking at us on the top of the jail. Anybody have questions?
It's a long ways up.
Well, that was a great presentation. You know, the
Thank you.
thing about having these presentations is it helps us and hopefully helps the public to understand the number of very diverse, very complicated operations that people at the county are responsible for, and we appreciate all that you and your staff do.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next
I
item
do.
as
I
well,
have the next
item
item as
14.
well. This, I'm just asking for approval on the latest addendum to the CBM or Summit Food Service contract. The first item of the contract is the adjustment in the meal rate, which that's a every year renewal or amendment to the contract. It's pretty straightforward. Increases the cost of our per meal costs by the CPI, Food Away from Home Index. This year it's a 1.5% increase, and it's essentially 2 cents per meal. The costs go from $1.243 per meal to $1.261 per meal for the regular tray. I'd ask that we approve that one. The second is a consent to assignment and assumption agreement. That basically acknowledges that CBM is a subsidiary of Summit Food Services, and Summit Food Services assuming all the responsibilities of that contract.
Any questions? Warden Gromer? So I'm going to need 2 separate motions. The
separate-
first motion
correct.
I would take would be a motion to approve amendment number 4.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve amendment number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next would be a motion to approve the consent to assignment and assumption by Summit Food Service.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Olivia, do you have the copy signed by CBM?
No.
Okay.
She will shortly, I can tell.
Madam Chair, I think that our new jail looks a lot better than some parking ramps I've seen being built.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item, speaking of the diversity of things that happen here at the county, we have a briefing on the tax deed process by Pam Nelson. Good morning.
In an effort to find the information that you asked for in a letter that you sent to me, I started looking for that information. And one of the people I got fortunate to find was Dawn in IT. So in the tax deed process, we work very closely with the IT department and with the auditor's office. It looks to me like in Dawn's letter that you received, that we are pretty much on schedule for everything that we were supposed to be doing. I don't do the tax deed process necessarily. That work is done by, and has always been done by the deputy treasurer. But that was Norma Erickson for about 50 years, and it was another person for a year or two, and now Kelly Nyhoff in our office is the person that is responsible for doing that particular program. I brought Kelly along so she can answer any questions more specifically about the tax deed process. I think the letter that you got in your packet pretty much outlines the status of tax deeds and where they are and where they need to be. Quite frankly, one of the things in looking for all this information, I wasn't exactly sure it was documentable, but I was always told that the treasurer's office would proceed with these tax deed steps as we have time. And so we are on schedule for everything that needs to be. There was one item that had, in this letter, and it's in about the 4th paragraph, next to last sentence, and it basically says that the letters were getting ready to go out. Those letters, half of them went out yesterday, and the other half will go out today. So with that, and the one other thing you might want to know would be that the work in the treasurer's office is greatly impacted by decisions made by and events that happen because of those decisions by other people. For example, we spent 2 days this week trying to figure out the mess up with the state system that went down for their accounting. It took a long, it messed up numbers. We spent 2 days working on it. It wasn't available and we couldn't use it, but we're now doing that. The state also sent out, and some of you were concerned about the length of the wait on the telephone. It's an issue on a regular basis, but nothing like it was. The state sent it. The biggest problem occurred when the state sent out all the June renewal notices that had wrong information. They were for, you might have got a card that told you you owned vehicles that you never owned or don't currently own. So that took quite a while to straighten that out. So then they sent out a second card, so then people are really confused. And so then a lot of people didn't even look at the card, they just send what they says the total is on the bottom. So then we have to send those checks back because they're not for their vehicles and they're not for the appropriate amount of money. So that increases our workload significantly. Right now, we have about 3 persons a day working on doing nothing but mail. And for the most part, that requires people in the back office to put off some of the things that they do, or it requires me to take people from the window to make sure that that work gets done as well. But I'm happy to report that when I took that office, the wait time was 2.5 to 3 hours. It's now 15 minutes or less. So Kelly will be here, and I'll have her come up, and if you have any specific questions about the process. Otherwise, I think the document that in the letter that we received from Dawn explains exactly where we are, how much money is involved. If you have any questions, Kelly's here.
Are there questions for the treasurer, the assistant treasurer?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Barth?
you know, state laws and stuff continue to change, and it seems like we don't always get informed about changes in their processes. I think we had an issue with charging distant folks, helping them get their titles or their license plates. And the state had changed the law after we had this practice of charging a small fee. You know, with your organization and peer, you know, the elected officials, do they keep you informed about changes in legislation?
Sometimes, as best they can. Another change that took place, I think it took place last session, which increases our workload significantly, would be that the treasurer's office now does all the title work. Before, dealers did some and the state did some. Now we're doing the states and the dealers because that law got changed. So now we're responsible for all the title work. And I wasn't aware that the situation that you're talking about necessarily was a result of a change in law.
I guess that was my understanding, but.
Are any other questions about the tax deed process? I have a question, and I certainly thank Dawn. She did a good job in helping putting this all information together, and I think it's helpful for all of us to get reminded about how this process works. So when you said that half the letters went out yesterday and half the letters went out today, is that those are the 2013 that are referenced in the middle of that letter from Dawn? Okay, so those are all out now. And so,
half will be done today.
okay.
Yep.
So that is in the appropriate timing for the auditor to do tax deed sales this fall. Okay.
There is a sale, I think Bob's scheduling it for September. I thought it was the 19th, but it's sometime in September.
28th.
Oh, it moved to the 28th.
28th or 24th.
Okay, all right. Anything else? Commissioner Heiberger, you look like you're about ready to.
Well, I just, you know, Dawn did do a great job of explaining this. I had to read it several times because it's difficult to understand. And so I'm going to ask some questions, partially not understanding and partially because I want other people to understand too. So on the papers that we got, does this even list what the actual property tax is, or is it just the total of the fines and fees that these people have to pay? And then there's also the property tax part of it. So I'm wondering if this is, so if, you know, if you looked at a bill and it's $4,953.52, that's just the fees and.
That's all the tax amounts of what they owe up through the first half of 2018.
Madam
going
Chair,
back to-
we need to use the microphone.
Oh, yeah, Kelly, if you don't mind
Yeah.
using the microphone, thank you.
Yep, those fees include all of their back taxes and including the first half of 2018 that were not paid.
Okay.
And then she breaks it down with the fees and interest, and then she had also of when we go through the process of the tax certificate and everything like that, which ones we may want to look at, because some of them go down to $21.95, and that's going all the way through 13. Do we want to spend that amount of money to collect just the whole process of doing the certificate, and with the 400 and putting that one on the sale for, we may lose money on that one versus how much their taxes are.
Commissioner Heiberger.
Additional, so now letters have gone out to these property owners that their taxes are delinquent, dating back to 2013, and so that's not going forward. And I'm just reading this for the public. So $626,642.19 is delinquent amount of property taxes and fees at the end of 2013.
Correct. That would be
And
correct.
so,
There's approximately like 80 parcels that are on back in 13 that have not been paid.
well, that affects everyone that would receive that tax money, not only the county, but the school districts and the townships of people who are not receiving the money that they should receive. When and if we receive that money, is that paid out to each individual entity in a lump sum? You know, somebody gets $500,000 because it was back taxes. How do they pay those out when those monies come in?
It was my understanding that the school district gets their money no matter what, but the other people lose their revenue.
I think you're right about that one. I think about that again. So we're looking at,
Board experience.
yeah, exactly. School board. So you're looking at $626,642, clear back from 2013 that hasn't been paid to, I guess it would be the cities and the counties that we've taken it in the shorts.
Further questions?
I think Commissioner Benega.
Commissioner Benega?
I think I understand this, but to be fair, I probably need to ask you for sure, is what's the trigger on the three-year period of time before you start the process, and then it goes to the tax deed process where we actually try to collect that dollar amount?
After the 4th year, when in December, when the tax certificate is issued.
So for, excuse me, for 2018, the process was actually started in 14,
Correct.
not 13. Okay.
It's payable in 14. And in code right now assigns the certificates not exactly the way Dawn would like them to do it, because they put tax certificates even on your first half if you were delinquent last year, and that's never been the case before.
Well, I'm sure we could argue a little bit if we wanted to that this sooner you start this and they're aware of the issue, the sooner we'll get some sort of settlement, but that's yet to be seen, I guess. How long does it take from the time that you start that process before it
Because
actually goes to the tax sale, so to speak?
When they go on we just did these ones on the 3rd Monday, so actually we have 6 years to take. The 13 taxes, we have until December of 2020 before we would ever lose out on any of these properties.
You said 6
6 years.
Okay. So again, the discussion could be the sooner we can
And the
start
tax
this, the
certificate
better off
doesn't-
we are.
The tax certificate doesn't go on until after the 3rd Monday of the 4th year.
Okay.
And just to clarify, we are doing this as soon as we can. The fact that they went out this week that's the first opportunity we had for these 2013 properties, correct?
Correct. There was some turnover in our office that this should have already been done prior to now.
But we have June or July to get it done. And it says
Normally
as-
it's not done till then, yep.
Yes, and it's as we are able, it says. And like I said, we had a lot of other problems, not caused by us.
Commissioner Heiberger?
So the 2014 ones, those are now, as of 18, delinquent for 3
And
years.
those letters,
So
we
those-
would then work on them this summer for the following year.
So they still have another year before they go out? They don't go out this year?
Correct.
2014 goes out by next year.
Yes.
The deadline is June, so the sooner the better, like Commissioner. But
Right.
then another question, and I don't know if it's a question for you but the liability part of it, at what point is the county liable for those properties that have not paid taxes and they're living on them? I'm not sure who that question goes to.
Madam Chair, I think Commissioner Heiberger's point is that if that property should belong to the county and someone breaks their neck on the staircase, since it was now on county property, we're the ones that are liable for that damage.
Does the state's attorney have any feedback on that issue?
Well, Madam Chair, if any of the commissioners, including the chair, want to ask a legal question on that, you can certainly contact us and we'll issue an opinion.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Karski.
I'm looking at the certificate number, and I'm thinking that it would, go like the first one, certificate 12-00053 would be in 20, which was in 2012, would be in 2013. And 2014, is the certificate number the same as the taxpayer? I mean, is that the same property and taxpayer? Because it seems like, okay,
Because Encode does it a different way than what Dawn would prefer it to when it assigns a tax certificate number. It's taking, when they're really not payable, I believe, the way I understand her, if they're not payable until the following year, it's really assigning the 15s when they're just the 14s number.
So if somebody comes in and pays, if they were doing 12 and they paid taxes this year, would we pay it, would we apply it to this year, or would we go back to the most delinquent year?
If they come in before, like if they were 4 years delinquent, they have delinquent taxes, if they say they can just pay 1 year's worth of taxes, Norma was taking them, but the certificate always stays on the oldest year. They can't pay 12s and then still have delinquent 13s. Their certificate will always stay on the oldest year if they cannot pay it in full. Because Norma was
So
taking
you can
them.
pay your 2017 taxes and still be delinquent for 2013? Okay.
Because then, but we still hold, the county would still hold a certificate on it.
Commissioner Heiberger.
So, and I think you said this, but I have to reiterate. So if they're delinquent clear back in 12, they can't come in and just pay 12 and 13 and be behind yet for 14, 15, 16.
The 12s would have to stay on. They can pay 13s, they can pay 14s, 15s, but the 12s will be delinquent unless they can clear all of it up.
Okay.
And that's so you don't have to start the tax deed process all over.
All over again.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say for citizens that are watching that we don't want to own your property. We want your money, the taxes that are owed. And honestly, Pam, I appreciate you being here today, and I think make sure that we have staff that's cross-trained to do this going forward as best you can. And thanks for being here.
Well, the process got a little more complicated because we switched to Encode. And the training of those people has taken a little time. And Encode truthfully takes twice as long as the other system. You have to go to 2 screens or 3 screens to do what you used to do on one. So it's made the job take a little longer than it would otherwise too. But I am trying to I try to have a backup for, at least 2 backups for everybody in my office.
Commissioner Benega.
Just my final question. If I look at this right, if you take the certificates for 2012, 2013, 2014, instead of the grand total showing on the last page, that total is closer to $1.2 million rather than the 415 that it shows.
Yeah.
Because the 415 is just for the 14s.
Okay,
She
so
broke it down per year.
So the fees and the real estate reassessment, or whatever we want to call it, is about $1.2 million in revenue that we don't have.
If you add them all up.
Okay.
And if you throw that back into my earlier comment and Pam's earlier comment, that's not school district money that's missing, that's the rest of us.
Right.
Well, once again, thank you very much for coming this morning. We appreciate you being willing to respond to this request for information and come forward today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes us to item 16, and I think Commissioner Heiberger is going to do this presentation on the Sioux Empire Leadership Council resolution.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. So this today, the action that I'm requesting is authorization to participate in the Sioux Empire Leadership Council. About 5 years ago or so, this was kind of the dream thought for this community is to put together a collaboration with community leaders and government officials to work together to collaborate and leverage our resources together. So about a year and a half ago, when we looked like we were going to get the Safety and Justice Challenge, we started working towards that avenue, meeting with different stakeholders in the community to get buy-in from them as to come together as a united group to work on projects together. When the new mayor came on, his platform was One Sioux Falls, which fit into the direction that we wanted to go with trying to unite a bunch of different stakeholders. Everyone retains their own independence as far as their decisions in their own departments, but coming together, we check our personalities at the door and we try to work together, or we plan to work together for the betterment of our community and to better inform each other. Just going around and trying to talk to different stakeholders that I will mention here in a minute, it took months to try to set up meetings. Aaron Sertska has helped, and we have gone around and tried to meet with everyone individually, the commissioners, the different counties, the different county, and different stakeholders, just to try to bring them together. We're finally at the point where we will sign a resolution. Some of the ones, and we're looking just for better communication and better collaboration between the different groups of people in our community so that we can better serve our community and use the resources effectively. Some of the people that are going to be on this group, which we hope to meet quarterly, would be the commission, which at this point I'm on there as our representative with Dina as my second. Lincoln County will also have a commissioner and a second person on it. The mayor of Sioux Falls and a city councilor. The Unified Judicial System, which will be the Second Circuit Court Judge Robin Hallman. The Sioux Falls Public School Districts, which has already signed the resolution, I believe, last week. The Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, the president and CEO of that, Jason Ball. The Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, Andy Patterson, the president of Avera the Avera Health Administration and the Sanford Health Administration. We have already met twice, I think, and talked about resolution and bylaws, and now we're in the process of bringing them back to our respective groups for their buy-in on this. We will be using data to move forward. Because we got the Justice and Safety Challenge, we were able to hire a data person that will help collect data for not only the triage center, but as we're moving projects forward. It also helped us sign a contract with USD School of Medicine to hire a coordinator for the Leadership Council and the triage center. So the Sioux Empire Leadership Council will be kind of like an umbrella over projects that we take on. The first project that will be underneath this is the Triage Center, which that's where this funding is crossing over for the Safety and Justice Challenge. It helps us as a county because not only are we using those funds, but we're using those funds in different areas to bring the collaboration of the different communities together to help us, so that not only Minnehaha County as a government benefits from this, Lincoln County will also benefit for this. When the grant money is gone, we will have this collaboration together that hopefully we can continue to fund the different projects that we have worked on, like the Triage Center or anything else. We'll be looking at social determinants of health and how to make our community a healthy, safe place to live. So with that, we also have the sheriff here, and he also will have to sign a resolution on behalf of himself or his office, because he's an elected official. And so I would just ask if you have any additional comments, Sheriff, that you could add.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Nolston, Minnehaha County Sheriff. And Commissioner Heiberger's been working on this for a long time. I think something you learned through NACO and some of your experiences with other county commissions across the country. I see this as kind of formalizing the relationship that we have, an existing relationship with all these partners, and it's a way to put it down on paper, get the commitment from them, and move forward with some important projects like the Triage Center. Kind of gives a governance structure a little bit to helping to say, you know, how are we going to fund the operation? How are we going to seek grant funds? How are we going to, you know, where will it be located for sure? Right. And so I think this is a good thing. I signed off on it. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. We had a draft and we worked through some wording, but we wanted to make sure that people understand that It doesn't mean now that any of us work for this council. It's this council oversees the development of important projects, and it may not always be in one area. It could be about, you know, safer schools. It could be about better education. It could be about, you know, it's not necessarily things that will be in my avenue, but certainly I'm supportive of this idea and this venture. So I signed off on it, and I think that you will get strong support from the other stakeholders, and I appreciate you moving forward with this.
Thank you, Sheriff. We also have Carl here. I don't know if you're excuse me, Judge Holman is here. I didn't see her. If you would mind putting in 2 cents too, please, I'd appreciate it.
I'm here today on behalf of the Second Judicial Circuit of the Unified Judicial System, who will also be signing the resolution to participate in the council. I believe as a representative of our judicial system that it's very important for the judicial system to have a voice at the table for all of these community projects that may impact what goes on in the courthouse every day. We already see the benefits of the council and the community collaboration through our work in the Safety Justice Challenge Grant, and I look forward to the other opportunities that will come to the Unified Judicial System as part of this council. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my action would be just to ask for permission to authorize the chairman to sign participation in the Sioux Empire Leadership Council.
Questions or comments?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Commissioner Benega.
I would just say that I saw recently that the city council, I think, has already approved $1.2 million in construction remodeling for parts of their surplus funds that they use. So I appreciate their initiative in getting the funding piece of that funded, so to speak, and seated.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of great progress, exciting progress that's been covered on the triage center, and I think we're all very excited to see that come to fruition. I'd personally just like to thank Commissioner Heiberger for her leadership on this. This is any of you who've had to try to coordinate a lot of, bring together a lot of people with very busy people who have lots of different places that they need to be. Collaboration is something that I think all taxpayers want and hope for, and I think have no idea how hard it is to pull off. And so I just really want to commend Commissioner Heiberger and thank Aaron Surska for the work that they've done to bring us to this point today. There's a lot of hard work to do ahead of us, but I'm fully in support of this. So we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Barth.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Heiberger.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks to everyone. Okay, that takes us to item 17, liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports? Commissioner Heiberger,
I have
figured you
more,
were going
so
to have your
I'm
hand
going to
up.
go back to back here and talk again. I've got a bunch of notes. One thing that I handed out to you as staff was a couple weeks ago, I talked about the Reimagining Justice, Juvenile Justice, a group that the state association, the state JDAI group has been working on. And what I passed out to you is just the module, the 6 different workshops that some of our staff and staff from across the state of South Dakota will be attending in Pierre. Just kind of a follow-up for that information. So just putting that on your plate that you want to maybe look at that later. The other thing, as I mentioned last week, that I would talk about was the Justice Safety Challenge Network that I attended last week. I'm going to just make it really brief. There were about 8 people also from Pennington County, I believe about 8 people from Minnehaha County that attended. The objective was to bring attendees together under this MacArthur grant that we have, bring the attendees together based on the shared focus and areas and the roles, and to try to inspire and motivate us on our teams, and gave us time to access leadership. As you just mentioned, Commissioner Bendiger, it is hard to rally everybody together and be able to talk in one room. So our Minnehaha County team was able to work on ideas about the triage center. Mostly we worked on racial and ethnic fairness and communication strategies and how to bring the right people to the table and talk about them, and community engagement, which I think Minnehaha County is doing a great job with our Sioux Empire Leadership Council just getting formed. Us continue to work on racial and ethnic fairness issues and how do we bring those people all to the table to collaborate. Just I'm just going to give a couple statistics on one breakout group that I went to, talked about women in jail. I'm not quite sure how this is relative in Minnehaha County, but they said 80%, nationally, 80% of the women in jail are mothers, and 82% of the women in jail are in there for nonviolent offense, which breaks down to prostitution, drugs, and public disorder defenses. Oklahoma has started a women's justice court for first-time offenders only. Obviously, we don't have anything here like that, but maybe something for the future that the state of South Dakota would look at is how do we deal with those women in jail specifically? When you're thinking that 80% of nationally are mothers, how many kids does that affect? Because each mom has maybe 2 kids on an average. How many kids are we sticking in the Department of Correction or Department of Social Services because their moms are in jail? And the separation of those mothers with their children, what lasting effects does it have on them? So just something for us to think about in the future, and maybe that'll be another issue for the Leadership Council to look at in the future. And I think that was my only report.
Any other? Commissioner Barth.
Yesterday, I attended a field tiling discussion hosted by the corn growers, and it was really pretty wide-ranging. We had people from up in Hamlin County, people down in Turner County. We had commissioners, we had producers, we had scientists from SDSU, and we went from drainage from the fields to climate, the rain coming down, the size of our culverts, the size of our bridges. I mean, it was wide-ranging, and I think we all came out of it with a better understanding of the almost insurmountable issues that we're facing. Then last night we had our usual Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the city of Sioux Falls didn't have a quorum, so we had to recess from that meeting until a quorum showed up, and then we went on with our own meeting until they came back with a full quorum. But we had a gravel pit that was a bit contentious over by Hartford, also on Road 261st Street, which is totally obliterated under south of the Brower subdivision, and that Brower subdivision has just got me. In any case, we also had some eligibilities moving, and honestly, that is never an issue. It was a bit of an issue last night because people are saying that rural residential stuff is cramping the the opportunity for concentrated animal feeding operations. And so the more people we allow building, acreages and stuff out in the county, the more difficult it becomes, even though we have the covenant, Freedom to Farm covenant put on the deed that doesn't keep people from necessarily complaining. And by the way, along complaining, in Grant County, they going to put in some windmills, and because of the imagined threat of the concrete that they'll put in the ground to support those windmills, they're putting in monitoring wells near the windmills to see if the concrete is poisoning the aquifer. People are doing anything they can to stop anything they can, and we have to learn that we're all in this together. And if I might, Minnehaha County is one of the top agricultural counties in the state. We're either 5th or 6th in the whole state in ag income. And the rural residential stuff is something we need to keep in mind, and the people living in the rural area need to know that development may occur somewhere near them.
Thank you. Anything else? Commissioner Bennigan.
I won't go into any detailed reports, but over the last week, I've met with the building management group, the public advocates group, and the Fair Board and IT about campus growth and operational related issues. We'll all get more details while we're going through the budget process, but I'm impressed with everybody's ability to manage their growth within the reasons that we set, reasonable budget that we set last year, but some of that's going to have to change because of, frankly, the significant growth in public safety related issues, not only in building, but in just general community growth-related issues, so more to come.
Yep, budgeting's right around the corner, so we'll
Yes,
get an
sir.
opportunity to explore all those challenging issues. Anybody else? All right, that takes us to new business. Any new business? Any old business? If not, I'd entertain a motion to recess.
Let's go to recess.
Recess?
No, I'm sorry, not recess. We no exec, so
Let's adjourn.
motion to adjourn. I'm so sorry.
Second.
Yeah. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much.